Change begins within. When you become aware that your external results are nothing more than a mirror reflecting what's happening inside you. The world around you responds to your beliefs, your habits, your standards, and your willingness to grow. And the moment you decide to look inward instead of outward, the entire direction of your life starts to shift. When you realize that nothing truly changes until you do, you stop wasting time trying to rearrange circumstances and start investing that energy into transforming the person who is producing those circumstances. Change begins within when you finally admit that the patterns holding you back are not random, they are repeated, they are familiar, they are comfortable. And even though they are costing you progress, you continue to tolerate them because they don't demand anything new from you. When you choose to confront those patterns instead of avoiding them, you open the door to a level of growth that external effort alone could never unlock. Change begins within when you stop blaming people, situations, and opportunities and start acknowledging that the common denominator in all your experiences is you. This isn't about guilt, it's about empowerment. Because the moment you accept that you are the source, you also accept that you are the solution. You begin to realize that you don't need permission to evolve. You need commitment. Change begins within when you decide that your inner world deserves the same energy and attention you give to the things you want externally. You can't expect abundance while tolerating scarcity in your thoughts. You can't pursue excellence while permitting mediocrity in your actions. You can't desire a higher level of life while maintaining a lower level of habits. The inside must rise before the outside can follow. Change begins within when you let go of the version of yourself that was shaped by fear, survival, or past experiences. That version may have served you once, but it cannot take you where you want to go now. Releasing it is uncomfortable because it feels like losing part of your identity, but in reality, it's making space for who you were always meant to become. Change begins within when you stop running from the conversations you need to have with yourself. The conversations about discipline, the conversations about consistency, the conversations about who you're pretending to be versus who you're capable of being. These internal dialogues are where real breakthroughs happen because they force you to face the truth you've been avoiding. Change begins within when you decide to upgrade your mindset instead of trying to upgrade your circumstances first. A new job won't fix old thinking. A new relationship won't heal unresolved wounds. A new opportunity won't erase a lack of preparation. It is the internal elevation that empowers you to handle, protect, and multiply the blessings that come your way. Change begins within when you start treating your life like something that matters. When you wake up with intention instead of drifting through the day. When you hold yourself accountable before expecting accountability from others. When you make decisions based on who you're becoming, not who you've been. Every small act of internal alignment moves you closer to the life you want to build. Change begins within when you understand that transformation is not a moment, it is a process. It is the daily discipline of choosing growth over comfort, truth over ego, and future over familiarity. It is the quiet work that no one sees but everyone eventually notices. It is the commitment to becoming better even when no one is watching. Change begins within when you recognize that the power to reshape your life has always been in your hands. Waiting for the moment you stop looking for external solutions to internal problems and start doing the inner work that strengthens your identity, sharpens your purpose, and elevates your entire existence. Delay has a cost because every moment you hesitate is a moment your potential is placed on hold. And while it may feel harmless in the moment, time has a way of revealing just how expensive hesitation truly is. When you postpone the decision to grow, to change, to commit, or to take responsibility, you create a gap between where you are and where you could have been. And that gap widens with every day you wait. Delay has a cost because opportunities are not permanent fixtures waiting for you to feel ready. They move, they shift, they evolve, and when you choose to procrastinate, those opportunities quietly drift into the hands of someone who acted with urgency. You may never see the full list of things you could have achieved, but you will feel the weight of knowing you allowed possibility to slip through your fingers. Delay has a cost because every excuse you make reinforces a pattern that becomes harder to break. What starts as "I'll do it later" becomes a lifestyle of postponement. And that lifestyle becomes a habit that shapes your destiny without your permission. The longer you entertain hesitation, the more it builds its roots into your mindset, making action feel heavier than it needs to be. Delay has a cost because your future self is depending on your present discipline. When you stall, you are not only affecting your current situation, you are affecting the person you will become. Every delayed decision adds weight to the shoulders of your future self, forcing them to carry burdens you could have relieved long ago if you simply acted when the moment first called for you. Delay has a cost because life does not hand out refunds for wasted time. You can recover money, you can rebuild relationships, you can regain energy, but you cannot reclaim a single second once it passes. And when you understand the value of time, procrastination stops looking like convenience and starts appearing as one of the biggest threats to your purpose. Delay has a cost because the longer you postpone the work, the harder the work becomes. What could have been handled with consistency becomes a crisis when ignored. What could have been built gradually becomes a mountain when pushed aside. Delay magnifies difficulty, turning simple steps into steep climbs that require far more effort than if you had just started earlier. Delay has a cost because your confidence erodes every time you avoid the actions you know you should take. Every unfulfilled promise to yourself chips away at your belief in your own word. And when you no longer trust yourself to follow through, your dreams begin to feel unrealistic, not because they are impossible, but because your consistency has weakened. Delay has a cost because waiting creates room for doubt, fear, and overthinking. The longer you sit on a decision, the louder the internal resistance becomes. What might have been a simple commitment becomes a battle with your own mind, and the more time you give fear to speak, the more it convinces you that action is too risky, too uncomfortable, or too ambitious. Delay has a cost because progress requires momentum, and momentum requires movement. Each time you delay, you interrupt the flow that could have carried you forward. Momentum is built through repeated action. And when action is replaced by hesitation, that energy dissolves, forcing you to start from zero again and again. Delay has a cost because your purpose is calling you now, not someday. And every day you wait is a day you live beneath the level you were designed for, a day you shrink your own potential, a day you allow fear or comfort to win over growth and discipline, and a day you quietly pay the price for the future you keep postponing. Honesty unlocks transformation because real change can only begin when you stop hiding from yourself and start confronting the truth you've been avoiding. It's easy to point at circumstances, people, or timing, but the moment you turn inward and acknowledge your own role in your struggles, you gain access to a level of freedom that denial could never provide. Truth doesn't weaken you, it equips you with the clarity required to grow. Honesty unlocks transformation because the gaps in your life cannot be filled with excuses. They can only be filled with awareness and intentional action. When you admit where you've fallen short, you also reveal where you have room to rise. The truth exposes the limitations you've accepted, the habits you've normalized, and the patterns you've repeated, giving you the power to break them instead of being controlled by them. Honesty unlocks transformation because self-deception is a comfortable prison. It allows you to stay where you are while convincing yourself that you're trying. But real honesty shatters that illusion and forces you to face the difference between desire and discipline. It reveals the uncomfortable distinction between wanting results and being willing to do the work that creates them. Honesty unlocks transformation because you cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Ignoring your weaknesses does not make them disappear. It makes them grow in the shadows where they can quietly limit your progress. When you bring them into the light through truth, you give yourself the opportunity to address them, strengthen them, and transform them into areas of growth rather than sources of sabotage. Honesty unlocks transformation because it removes the emotional weight of pretending. Living behind a mask is exhausting, and the energy you use to maintain an image could be the same energy used to build a better version of yourself. When you choose authenticity over appearance, you reclaim the internal power that comes from alignment between who you say you are and who you actually are. Honesty unlocks transformation because it breaks the cycle of repeating the same mistakes. When you tell yourself the truth about your choices, your attitudes, your priorities, and your efforts, You begin to recognize patterns that have been guiding your life without your conscious permission. Awareness becomes the turning point that allows you to choose differently instead of defaulting to old routines. Honesty unlocks transformation because it strengthens your relationship with yourself. Every time you confront the truth, you rebuild trust in your own word. You learn to rely on your integrity, your commitment, and your willingness to grow. And the stronger your self-trust becomes, the more confidently you move toward your goals without needing validation or affirmation from others. Honesty unlocks transformation because it gives you a clear picture of your starting point. Without truth, you build on illusions, expectations, and assumptions. But with truth, you know exactly where you are, exactly what needs to change, and exactly what steps are required to move forward. Clarity is the foundation of progress, and honesty is what creates that clarity. Honesty unlocks transformation because it frees you from the fear of judgment. When you become honest with yourself, the opinions of others lose their power over you. You stop shaping your life to fit external expectations and start making decisions that align with your purpose, values, and future. Authenticity becomes your compass, guiding you toward growth that is real, not performative. Honesty unlocks transformation because it invites responsibility, and responsibility invites power. When you accept the truth about your life, your strengths, your weaknesses, your missed opportunities, and your potential, you position yourself to make intentional changes that reshape your results, your mindset, and your identity, allowing transformation to begin from the inside out. Your standards shape your life because everything you experience externally is a reflection of what you have chosen to tolerate internally. The level at which you allow yourself to think, act, and live becomes the blueprint for every result you attract. When your standards are low, your life adjusts downward without resistance, but when you raise them, everything connected to you is forced to rise with them. Your standards shape your life because they determine the quality of your decisions. Every choice you make comes from the internal bar you've set for what is acceptable, what is necessary, and what is possible. If your standards demand excellence, you instinctively pursue opportunities that stretch you, challenge you, and elevate you. If your standards permit mediocrity, you will always settle for less than what you are capable of achieving. Your standards shape your life because they define the boundaries you set with yourself. What you say yes to, what you refuse, how you manage your time, how you treat your body, how you handle distractions, and how you respond to setbacks. All of it is governed by the internal expectations you've created. When your standards are aligned with your purpose, your habits naturally follow. Your standards shape your life because consistency is built on them. You will always act in accordance with what you expect from yourself, even subconsciously. If you raise your standards, your consistency elevates. If you lower your standards, your consistency weakens. You will always return to the level of your standards, no matter how motivated you feel in the moment. Your standards shape your life because they influence the people you attract and the relationships you maintain. You accept the treatment you believe you deserve. When your standards are strong, you allow only those who respect your value, support your growth, and contribute to your peace. When your standards are weak, you open the door to people who drain your energy, disrespect your boundaries, and distract you from your purpose. Your standards shape your life because they dictate how you respond to adversity. A person with strong standards doesn't fold under pressure. They rise because they believe they are built for more. They don't allow challenges to break them. They let challenges refine them. But when standards are low, adversity becomes an excuse instead of a stepping stone. Your standards shape your life because they establish the difference between trying and committing. When you commit to a higher standard, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop accepting your own limitations as permanent. You stop allowing your emotions to dictate your decisions. You start operating from discipline rather than desire. And that shift alone transforms your entire trajectory. Your standards shape your life because they influence how you speak to yourself. Your internal dialogue shifts when you expect more from your life. You remove language that weakens you. You stop labeling yourself with limitations. You start affirming your potential instead of rehearsing your doubts. Your self-talk rises because your self-expectation rises. Your standards shape your life because they determine the level of opportunity you can sustain. Even if you receive something great, If your standards are not strong enough to maintain it, you will lose it. Success is not just about reaching a higher level. It is about becoming the kind of person who can remain there. Strong standards make you stable, prepared, and trustworthy with bigger blessings. Your standards shape your life because they ultimately define your identity. You become the person whose actions match their values, whose goals align with their effort, and whose life reflects their expectations. The moment you choose to raise your standards is the moment you choose to rewrite your future, elevate your environment, and step into a version of yourself capable of creating the life you once only imagined. You are one decision away from momentum because everything you desire, growth, progress, elevation, often hinges on one defining moment where you choose to stop waiting and start moving. Momentum is not built from dreaming or planning alone. It begins the second you make a firm decision that your future is no longer optional. That decision becomes the spark that ignites everything else, creating a shift within you that pushes your life in a new direction. You are one decision away from momentum because the gap between stagnation and progress is not as wide as it seems. Most people think they need perfect conditions, perfect clarity, or perfect timing to begin. But in reality, all they need is a commitment strong enough to override their excuses. When you decide fully and firmly that you are done standing still, the path forward starts to reveal itself step by step. You are one decision away from momentum because hesitation is the barrier that keeps you trapped in the same cycles. When you keep waiting for certainty, confidence, or motivation, you stay stuck. But when you decide to take action, even while uncertain, even while unsure, even while imperfect, that boldness generates energy. That energy becomes movement, and that movement becomes momentum that begins to lift every area of your life. You are one decision away from momentum because the moment you choose to act, you interrupt the pattern that has been holding you back. One decision can break years of indecision. One moment of courage can silence months of doubt. One step forward can disrupt an entire history of staying in the same place. Momentum is created when you choose action over comfort, even when that action feels small. You are one decision away from momentum because progress multiplies once it begins. The first step is the hardest, but once you take it, the next step becomes easier, and the one after that becomes natural. Momentum doesn't demand perfection, it demands movement. Movement grows into consistency, which grows into confidence, which grows into results that weren't possible when you were standing still. You are one decision away from momentum because your breakthrough is often sitting on the other side of a choice you've been avoiding. The decision to start, the decision to commit, the decision to change your habits, the decision to let go of what's been weighing you down, the decision to finally believe in yourself. Any one of these choices can shift the trajectory of your life if you are bold enough to make it. You are one decision away from momentum because internal alignment creates external acceleration. When you decide with conviction who you will be and what you will pursue, you eliminate the mental conflict that slows you down. You move forward with clarity instead of confusion. You move with purpose instead of hesitation. Your actions align with your identity, and that alignment creates power. You are one decision away from momentum because life responds to intentionality. When you decide clearly, loudly, and without negotiation, you begin to attract opportunities, ideas, and resources that match your commitment. Momentum is not magic. It is the natural response to a mind that has made a firm, unwavering decision to move forward. You are one decision away from momentum because the very act of choosing creates a psychological shift. It tells your mind, your habits, your emotions, and your environment that a new standard has been set. You stop thinking like the person who is stuck and start behaving like the person who is rising. And as your identity shifts, your actions follow and momentum becomes inevitable. You are one decision away from momentum because every great transformation starts with a single choice that rewrites your direction, your pace, and your future. And no matter how long you've waited or how far behind you feel, all it takes is the courage to make that decision right now to unlock the progress that has been waiting for you all along. Urgency creates elevation because when you move with intention, you activate a level of focus and intensity that ordinary effort can't produce. When you decide that someday is no longer acceptable and now becomes your only option, You ignite a fire within yourself that pushes your life upward faster than you ever imagined. Urgency is not panic, it is purpose in motion, driven by the understanding that your future depends on what you do today. Urgency creates elevation because it forces you to stop treating your potential like it's guaranteed. The more casually you approach your goals, the easier it becomes to drift, delay, and fall into the trap of waiting for a better time. But when you carry urgency, you stop assuming you have forever. You recognize that your purpose has a timetable. You understand that your dreams expire if they're not pursued, and that awareness alone raises your standards instantly. Urgency creates elevation because it eliminates the distractions that normally steal your attention. When you operate with urgency, you stop giving energy to what doesn't matter. You stop entertaining excuses. You stop negotiating with laziness. You stop allowing people or habits to pull you backward. Urgency sharpens your vision and gives you the clarity to focus only on what moves your life forward. Urgency creates elevation because it produces momentum. The faster you start, the faster your life begins to shift. When you take action immediately, consistently, and deliberately, you build a rhythm that pushes you beyond what you thought possible. Momentum doesn't come from waiting, hoping, or thinking. It comes from acting with the awareness that delay is dangerous and time is valuable. Urgency creates elevation because it forces you to discipline your emotions. When you know you don't have time to waste, you stop letting feelings dictate your decisions. You no longer wait to feel ready because you understand that readiness grows through action, not before it. Urgency teaches you to move even when you're uncomfortable, even when you're uncertain, even when fear whispers its loudest. Urgency creates elevation because it increases the quality of your effort. When you realize that every day counts, every choice matters, and every action adds up, you start working with precision instead of passiveness. Your work becomes sharper. Your consistency becomes stronger. Your habits become more aligned. You stop doing just enough to get by and start doing everything required to grow. Urgency creates elevation because it changes your identity. The moment you decide that your future is non-negotiable, you stop behaving like someone who has time to waste. You start thinking like a leader, acting like a builder, and moving like someone who fully understands the value of their purpose. This shift in identity elevates your entire life because you begin to operate at the level of the person you want to become. Urgency creates elevation because it attracts opportunities that speed up your progress. People respond to those who move with conviction. Doors open for those who take action. Resources flow toward those who demonstrate seriousness. When you move with urgency, you send a message to the world and to yourself that you are ready, prepared, and committed, and that energy draws elevation toward you. Urgency creates elevation because it stops you from settling. The moment you adopt urgency, you refuse to stay in environments, mindsets, or habits that slow you down. You start demanding more from yourself and expecting more from your future. You begin to see comfort as a threat, not a reward. And that shift alone lifts your entire life to a higher level of ambition. Urgency creates elevation because it awakens parts of you that have been dormant. Your discipline, your courage, your creativity, your faith, your resilience. And once those parts activate, you rise into a version of yourself capable of doing more, becoming more, and achieving more than you ever thought possible.